We're developing Europe's largest uranium project, and we're looking to contribute to Europe's clean energy future and create lots of jobs where it's needed. Just to understand the context of it, I think we're all aware that there's a big push to low carbon, clean energy, and the way it's been framed in this country at least has been mainly wind turbines. I think we accept the fact that wind turbines, particularly offshore, are very expensive. So now there's a shift towards renewables plus nuclear. And if you look at it in a European context, there's 160 nuclear reactors in Europe. Secretary of State Amber Rudd in this country has come out and said, we're not just going to build an odd one or two new reactors in this country, we're going to build a fleet of new reactors, and we're going to close all unabated coal-fired power stations over the next 15 years. So clearly, the environment is, certainly in Europe, it's about nuclear for the clean energy future. But that comes at a time when China and India are doing exactly the same thing on a very much bigger scale. So there's existing 160 nuclear reactors in Europe, they're building 300 more in Europe, in China and India. And to understand the context of the supply to that, we produce uranium that feeds those reactors. There is only one significant uranium mine in the whole of Europe. That's ours. There's one small one in the Czech Republic. And we are by far the largest, the biggest supplier. And to give you some idea how big we are, this project, the Salamanca project, it could power the whole of the UK's energy needs for 5.5 years. Not just nuclear, but everything. So it's a very big project. We have probably the best Spanish management team developing the project. They've developed 3 major projects in Spain before. This is their 4th project. We have all our approvals in place, all the major approvals in place, European Union, national, regional. And I previously announced that we were going to kick off the project in mid this year, June this year. We're doing better than that. I'm going to site next week to sign the contracts to actually commence construction next month. So we're well ahead of schedule. And just to understand the environment, our project's located in western Spain, near a town called Salamanca. I think most people in this room will know that Spain's suffering chronic unemployment in those areas. To give you a tangible read on that, our first 200 jobs we've offered, we've had over 19,000 applicants fully documented for those jobs. Every day, we get a new batch of document people looking for work. The unemployment levels in some age categories here are 50%. And to understand what it means for a community, we lose one more person in the primary school in the local village, the primary school closes, and there's intergenerational unemployment. So the fact that we're going to build a project that will offer 200 jobs initially, then it'll be 450 in total, and with the multiplying factor according to the University of Salamanca is ×5. So we're looking at creating 2,500 jobs in an environment where there's demand for 20,000. So you can imagine the kind of support we've got for that. Just to give you a very quick snapshot of what it means, we developed this project. We have about 200 million shares on issue. We're trading about 22 pence per share. We put this in production at current uranium prices. It's worth £1.31 a share. Uranium prices are right on the bottom at the moment. They tanked after Fukushima. They're right down near the bottom. So we're geared towards the uranium prices if they recover. And the reason why the project is so good, I'll explain at the moment, is because we discovered this really fantastic ore body called ZONA 7, and we think we've got potential for more of these ZONA 7s. So just without going through the technical stuff too much, why the project's so good? One is it's got some of the lowest capital costs in the world of any new project. Our capital cost is $81 million to get to first production, and our operating costs are $15 a pound, which is half the current spot uranium price, and we think we can get it lower. And it's very rare to have a combination of very low capital and very low operating costs. So that's why the project looks so good. And just the actual specific detail, we've got very high grade open pit, very low strip ratio, very, very competitive mining rates. Just to give you some example of what's happening in Spain, we're in a slightly deflationary environment. the mining rates we're getting offered now are actually lower than the 2013 rates that were in our study because it's so competitive. And then on the infrastructure side, and this is the bit where you guys have contributed, is the European Union has put in power lines, roads, ports, all the things that Spain has done after the last decade funded by the European Union, courtesy of the British taxpayer. So you've basically put a lot of money into this project, but that's effectively meant that instead of costing us $200 to $300 million to build this project, we get what we've estimated about a $150 million dividend from existing infrastructure. So if this project was, say, in Australia or somewhere else, we'd have to pay a lot more money because it wouldn't have this infrastructure. So they're the two reasons why the project looks so good. And I'm afraid this slide doesn't work very well, but this is the uranium price, and we currently have our data room and site full of financiers at the moment. And the financiers are really miserable people because I keep telling them this is the analyst consensus that the uranium price is going up. This is what the project's worth, you know, three pounds a share. They say, no, no, no. They say, we're going to take the current spot price and keep it flat, assume nothing happens. And then what the miserable buggers do, they take 30% off it. They take 30% off the bottom of the price and then say, have a look and see if your project can work. And we're fortunate, and I know you can't read this very well, but if you look at our yellow bars are our costs on an annual basis, and you look at the margin, we can generate a 42% margin or $30 million a year on the downside case. So it's just giving you some idea from a banker's perspective, for people who want to give us money, of how they look at the project and why they think it's so robust. I've just spent many years living in China, and I've just spent today, this morning, and prior to that, 3 weeks in Beijing. And everyone always hears the story about China's going to build something in the future and it's all going to be good. Well, the uranium renaissance, the nuclear renaissance, is happening now. Last year, they commissioned 6 reactors. They're building 23 at any one time, and they're going to commission 8 reactors a year for the next 10 years. Modi has just announced in India is going to commission 6 a year. And these are fully funded. So $227 billion, 14 new reactors every year being commissioned in those 2 countries, and that's going to put some demand into the uranium price. And without getting too technical, China and India, these are these new reactors, and these are the existing, don't have significant domestic uranium resources. So they have to look to the rest of the world to get their uranium. And if they look at new projects around the world, this is the way they look at it. They go, and each drum is the size of the project. The number on the drum is the operating cost, and the little price tag is the capital cost. So if you take this one here, this is fission energy. The Chinese have just basically taken control of this. One of the lowest cost producers in the world. It's slightly lower than us at $14. They've got $1 billion price tag. They look at some of these ones here. Anything above $30 a pound, they're not interested in. It's too high a cost. And they want to be in a developed country. So you add up low capex, low opex, and developed country, Salamanca looks really, really good. So we're very much in the firing line, very much fit exactly what the Chinese are looking for. I'm sorry, and the other thing is, we are the only new project being developed this year. We'll commence next month. We'll commence the infrastructure development. So, of all these projects, we're the only one kicking off this year. And why is it so good in terms of just specifically geologically, without getting too much? We found this deposit, and I know I'm not going to turn you to a geologist, but it's very simple. That's 4 meters. So basically, you can stand on the ground, dig down 4 meters. That's the top of the ore body. Now, I'm not sure standing on top of a radioactive ore body is very good for you, but it is. It's only 4 meters down. This is only about 100 meters. So that's very, very close to surface. That's what makes it so cheap. And we just drilled a deep hole through it, and sure enough, we found some more. So we're about to make an announcement about targeting more of these things. So this is the ore body that's made the project work, and we think we've got more of them. We're about to announce an exploration program to go and have a look. And this is detail of that exploration program. They're all near surface. They're all within 10 kilometers of the processing plant. and they're high grade, and they're based on existing drilling. There'll be some more detail of that in an announcement next week. So what does this mean in terms of where the company is? Well, previously the company, this is pre the discovery of Zona 7, that ore body, was bid by the Russians and the Koreans. This is when the uranium price was very high, at sort of £1 a share. Like all the uranium stocks, the share price tanked, and we've sat here for 4 or 5 years doing nothing. And then we found this Zona 7, and the stock's just starting to appreciate, and our register's starting to look really quite good. First State is very, very large. You guys know First State. These are the Australian team. Hadron's a specialist fund manager here in London. The Resource Capital Fund, they fund all these junior mining companies. So they're one of our big funders, and they're on site next week. But the significance is BlackRock have just started moving in, buying the stock on market. So there's a very strong appetite. And we've subsequently had a whole bunch of analysts to site, and they're all talking about this, I mentioned before, £1.30. They're all around that £1 a share as their valuations. So I guess in summary, some of you may know Julian Tregear, Anglo-Pacific Group. He's our biggest shareholder. He's quite positive about the story. Dave Talbot from Dundee in Canada. He's rated Berkeley as the #1 pick from a Canadian perspective in the whole world in the uranium space. And Argonaut have just been to site, and they're about to come out with a research report with over £1 a share on the share price. So I'd encourage you to, if you're interested, grab a business card off me. We'll put you on our mailing list, and I'm happy to join you for your drink later and not keep you too long. Thank you very much for your time.
Any questions, anybody? Sure, there'll be a few hands. Gentleman there in the blue shirt, or top.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. On a macro level, I didn't quite get what I thought were conflicting points. You've got China and India commissioning large nuclear large projects. They're going to require the resource, and historically very, very low uranium prices, and with a risk factor brought in as well that they could go lower. From the market's perspective, you imagine traders would have cottoned on to the fact that there's lots of demand from China and India. Why then is the uranium price where it is?
The expectation is that, and we're saying this in our announcements, we don't think the uranium price will do anything for 2 years. But we think, and there's a specific reason for it, is most of the utilities contract out 3 to 5 to 8 years, and they're all fully loaded at the moment. Those contracts run out in about 3 to 4 years, and that's when they'll come back into the market, and that's when they'll be short. So there's nobody in the market, nobody buying at the moment. And your comments about the traders, they are buying. They are buying. The only people buying in the market at the moment are uranium traders positioning themselves, the intermediates, buying uranium now, ready for this rise in 2-3 years' time. So they're actually in the market.
But if you buy now, the price goes up.
It is, well, I don't know about whether the price goes up or not, but in terms of volume, the only buyers in the market are people, financial buyers and traders, who are actually buying volume at the moment. I don't know why it's not going up, I have no idea. But they're buying to sell into it at a higher price in 2-3 years' time.
Next question. This one, gentleman here, and then Neil after.
Hi there. A similar question, just to understand how much more capital needs to go into the mine, and again, sort of, production sort of time frame. The other question I had, which was just, you talk about 5.5 years of supply to the UK. That to me doesn't seem like a huge amount of supply.
It's the whole of the UK's industry. It's not just the nuclear power plants. It's actually very large. We would rank, in terms of, answer all your questions, we'd rank in terms of production in the top 10 in the world. We're looking to do 4 million pounds of uranium a year. It would put us in the top 10, probably 7 or 8, to give you some scale, size. I can't remember your first question, but also the capital we need. It's $81 million to build the plant. We're going to raise 100, and we're in the process of doing that now. So we would expect in March, April, that's why the guys are on site doing due diligence now, to come out with a financing to put that in place. So we're doing that right now.
That'll be that single raise, will it?
No, it could be two. It could be that we do an interim one now and the same people do something later. It could be a structured arrangement. It could be a strategic. We've got about 8 people in the data room of visiting site over the next 4 or 5 weeks, and we'll know at the end of it.
Paul, hi. Neil Pigeon from Harden again. Could you explain to myself and probably a lot of members in this audience who aren't quite as familiar with uranium as we are with gold or iron ore, the grade and the size of the deposit and how that relates to other projects around? I know you said it's very high grade, ppms and all that sort of stuff compared to the other ones in the world.
Sure. In terms of open pits, that Zona 7 I showed you, we think it's the highest grade open pit of its type in the world. We don't think there's another one close. So we think we're in the 500 to 700 ppm. Doesn't matter what the number is, but we think it's the highest in the world. Obviously, there are underground mines with in Canada have very, very high grades, but you've got to go and put $1 billion of capital, like fission, and you get down to much higher grade. So 4 meters below the surface, it's sitting there at 500 to 700 ppm. It's great.
You mentioned Fukushima, the accident there. I mean, it certainly had an effect on Angela Merkel in that she didn't want any reactors in her country. What are the dangers of there's a lot of terrorism in the world, another accident like that tanking the price of uranium? Or is that factored in at all?
Without getting too specific about it, most reactors now are called Generation 3. And I know this very specifically. The Westinghouse AP1000 is designed to withstand exactly what you're talking about. You can fly, apparently, a jumbo jet full of explosives into an AP1000, and apparently it won't blow up. All the disasters we've had are Gen 2, Gen 1, whatever. And apparently Generation 4 are even safer. So the industry answer to that is all these new reactors are super safe for all known eventualities. Apparently.
Other questions, anyway? I'm sure they've got some more questions. Gentlemen, just here.
Nuclear confuses me a little bit. First thing is, what is nuclear fission and what is nuclear fusion? Nuclear fusion is a more different, more modern thing, I understand.
One goes like this, and the other one goes like that. That's basically what it is. Yeah. One of them is you're colliding them together and getting it so it actually comes together and smashing to pieces and generating heat. The other one, you smash it together and everything blows out. And the problem I was getting mixed up. With fusion, it's really good because everything comes together and there's no distribution. Fission goes the other way. So what we're trying to move away from is fission into fusion, because it actually brings it all together. There's a lady here nodding because she actually knows more about it than I do. But basically, all the science is in colliding things, like the Hadron Collider, colliding things together and then getting energy to dissipate. At the moment, what fission does, fission explodes things together and everything blows out that way, including energy. And that's what the problem with it is. It's basically, it emits things that we don't want.
So fusion is safer, is it?
Apparently, yes.
Does it use as much uranium or is it less?
Much less. It's almost the holy grail for energy. If you can make fusion work, it depends what you're using a lot less. But to take you where it's going, it won't change much from uranium very quickly. The next stage will be thorium reactors. And the reason why thorium and not uranium...
I'm confused already.
Yeah. No, just you're talking about the fuel to feed the reactor. It's uranium now. The problem with uranium is two things. One is you've got to dispose of the waste, which is what we're talking about. And secondly, you can potentially turn it into military capability. Thorium is much smaller, very little waste, and no military capability. So the Chinese, the Indians, and the Americans are working really, really hard. And in 30 years' time, instead of having Gen 4 uranium reactors, we'll have thorium reactors. Whether fusion ever happens, I don't know. That'll be sometime beyond that.
Okay,
That's my limited understanding. Sorry.
You.